The billionaire arrived home early, and the maid shouted, "Shut up!" The reason shocked everyone. Daniel Whitmore stepped out of the black car, his polished shoes landing softly on the stone driveway. He stood still for a moment, suitcase in hand, soaking in the quiet that wrapped around the estate like a heavy fog. The house, his house, looked pristine as always, but something was wrong. He couldn't explain it. The air felt too still. He hadn't told anyone he was coming back a day early. Not Catherine, not even the staff. It was meant to be a surprise, a romantic gesture, a quiet night with his wife after weeks of meetings and boardrooms. But as he stepped into the grand entryway and closed the door behind him, the silence that greeted him didn't feel inviting. It felt staged. "Hello," he called out. No answer. The chandelier above gleamed like a frozen waterfall. The scent of jasmine, Catherine's favorite, hung heavy in the air, almost masking something faintly metallic underneath. He took a step forward, glancing down the hallway toward the lounge. Laughter echoed faintly. And then, quick hands grabbed his arm. "Mr. Whitmore, please, you have to be quiet." He turned sharply. Sarah, the housemaid. Her eyes were wide, face pale, voice a trembling whisper. "Sarah, what?" "No time," she hissed, and before he could speak again, she yanked him into the hallway linen closet and shut the door behind them. It was dark, cramped, shelves pressed against his back. He opened his mouth to speak, but Sarah placed her hand gently over it. "Just listen." Voices floated in through the air vent above them. Clear, close, coming from the lounge. A woman's laugh. Catherine. "I still can't believe how easy this is," she said, her voice smooth and amused. "He actually drinks it, every single time." Daniel froze. A man chuckled. Brandon, his brother. "Well, it's slow acting for a reason," Brandon said. "He won't drop dead tomorrow. But give it another month or two. His liver will look like it belonged to a 90-year-old alcoholic." They both laughed. Daniel's chest tightened. He leaned closer to the slats of the closet door, breath shallow. Catherine again. "We need to keep playing the perfect couple a little longer. Once he's gone, everything falls into place. The board hands me control. You take over operations and we bury the evidence with him." "You're sure Sarah doesn't suspect anything?" Sarah tensed beside Daniel. She was holding her breath. "She's just a maid," Catherine said. "She's too scared to talk even if she did hear something. And Daniel still trusts me. He's clueless." The sound of clinking glasses followed. Champagne. A toast. "To the future," Brandon said. "To freedom," Catherine replied. Daniel staggered back, knocking into the shelves. A metal canister fell to the floor with a dull thud. He cursed under his breath. Sarah grabbed his wrist. "Don't move," she whispered. "Don't let them hear." For a second, there was silence outside. Then more laughter. The celebration continued. When the voices finally faded into another room, Sarah opened the door cautiously and pulled him into the hallway. Daniel's face was pale. Shock rippled through him. "They're trying to kill me," he said almost to himself. "My wife and my own brother." "I overheard them earlier," Sarah said quietly. "I didn't believe it at first, but when you walked in, I had to show you." Daniel rubbed his face with both hands, trying to push the horror away. "I need to call the police." "No," Sarah said firmly, grabbing his arm. "You can't. Not yet. They'll deny everything. Brandon has connections, and Catherine, she's good at this. Calculated. They'll say you're paranoid or sick. You need proof." Daniel looked at her, panic flaring in his eyes. "I've been drinking that wine," he said. "Every night. The headaches, the fatigue. I thought it was just stress." "It's not too late," she said. "You can start refusing it. I'll help you get better, but you need to pretend nothing's wrong." Daniel stared at the hallway, the walls that once felt like home now suffocating him. "I have to sit across from them, smile, eat dinner, while they slowly poison me?" "Yes," she said. "And you need to do it better than they expect. If they suspect you know, they'll speed things up." He took a deep breath. It shook on the way in. "Why are you helping me?" Sarah hesitated. "Because I've seen too many monsters in this house, and for what it's worth, I don't think you deserve to die like that." Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Sarah straightened, smoothing her uniform. Go. Walk into the dining room. Act normal. Daniel hesitated for half a second, then nodded. The dining room gleamed under the golden chandelier. A fire crackled gently in the marble hearth. Catherine stood at the far end of the long table, pouring red wine into 2 crystal glasses. She turned when Daniel entered. "Well, this is a surprise," she said, flashing him a smile. "I didn't expect you home tonight." "Changed my mind," Daniel said, walking toward her with careful ease. "Thought I'd surprise you." Brandon stepped in from the kitchen with a warm grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Great timing. Catherine's making your favorite, filet with mushroom sauce." "Lucky me," Daniel said. Catherine handed him a glass of wine. He stared at it for half a second too long. "Something wrong?" she asked sweetly. He smiled. "Just tired." He raised the glass to his lips, paused. Sarah appeared in the doorway carrying plates. Her eyes flicked to him, then the glass. Daniel lowered it, coughing lightly. "Actually, I think I'll skip the wine tonight. That flight hit me harder than I thought." Catherine tilted her head. "Really? That's unlike you." "Yeah," Brandon added. "You never pass up a vintage this good." Daniel shrugged, trying to be healthier. "Doctor's orders." Sarah set the plates down, careful not to make eye contact. Catherine slowly sat. Her eyes didn't leave Daniel. "Of course," she said. "We wouldn't want you getting sick." Daniel met her gaze, smiled. "No," he said quietly. "We wouldn't." For the next 2 weeks, Daniel Whitmore became an actor in his own home. He smiled at breakfast. He laughed at Catherine's dry jokes. He clinked glasses with Brandon at dinner. But behind every nod and chuckle, he was counting drops, tracking glances, and waiting for the moment one of them slipped. Sarah moved through the estate like a shadow. At night, she switched Daniel's wine glass for a safe one, pretending to refill it from the decanter while palming the original and pouring it down the drain. In the morning, she'd slip crushed charcoal pills into his orange juice, hoping to slow whatever damage had already been done to his body. The symptoms still lingered. Some days he felt like he was walking underwater, dizzy, exhausted, forgetting simple words. But the headaches had lessened. His appetite was returning. It gave him hope. Still, something gnawed at the edge of his thoughts. They were being watched. He first noticed it when walking into his study one afternoon. The door had been closed just as he'd left it, but his chair was slightly off-center, and a file he had tucked under a drawer, financial documents tied to Brandon's off-book company, had been moved an inch to the left. He said nothing. Instead, he bought a burner phone and called the only man he thought he could still trust. Detective Mark Thompson had been a friend of Daniel's father, a frequent guest at family barbecues and boardroom parties. He'd watched Daniel grow from a reckless teen into a polished CEO. If anyone would believe him, it was Thompson. They met in the back booth of a small diner, far from the city. The detective looked tired, his grey suit rumpled, his eyes ringed with stress. "You said it was urgent," Thompson said, sliding into the booth. Daniel leaned in. "I think someone's trying to kill me." Thompson blinked. "That's a hell of a way to start a conversation." "I'm serious," Daniel whispered. "I think Catherine and Brandon are poisoning me." A pause. "Have you seen a doctor?" Daniel stiffened. "This isn't in my head, I heard them. They admitted it. Sarah, one of my staff, she heard it too." "Where's your proof?" "That's what I'm trying to get. But I'm running out of time. I just need you to look into Brandon quietly. Any unusual financial movements, shell companies, anything you can find." Thompson nodded slowly. "All right, I'll look into it. Keep your head down." Daniel exhaled. Finally, someone on his side. But as soon as Daniel left, Thompson pulled out his phone and made another call. "Yeah," he said quietly. "We've got a problem, he knows." Back at the estate, the atmosphere was changing. Catherine had grown more attentive, offering Daniel massages, making his favorite meals, lingering at the table longer than usual. But behind her soft smiles, her eyes were sharp, studying him. Brandon had begun dropping in unannounced. One night, he brought expensive cigars and insisted they relive old college nights. Daniel declined, feigning stomach pain. Brandon didn't press, but his smile tightened. Sarah moved with more caution now. She kept to her chores but always kept Daniel in her peripheral vision. One night, while cleaning the guest hallway, she spotted a faint red light blinking from the air vent. She pulled a stool over and peered inside. A small camera. Hidden. Silent. Watching. She pulled it out and buried it under the trash in the garage, careful not to alert anyone. That night, she knocked quietly on Daniel's door. "We're not safe," she said. "Someone's watching the staff quarters." Daniel closed the door behind her. "They're getting paranoid. We need to leave." "No," he said. "If we run, we lose our chance to prove anything." Sarah hesitated. "Then we need to find that proof fast." 2 days later, Thompson returned with a report, or so it seemed. They met again, this time in Daniel's office. Catherine was supposedly at the spa, Brandon out on business. "I looked into Brandon," Thompson said, placing a thin folder on the desk. "Nothing illegal on the surface, but there are some strange payment patterns." Daniel flipped through it quickly, eyes scanning the numbers. A few payments stood out, large transfers to a private security firm. "I'll keep digging," Thompson said, "but if you want to nail them, you'll need something cleaner. Audio, video, something irrefutable." Daniel nodded. "I'll find it." As soon as Thompson left, Catherine appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay?" she asked, voice light. Daniel turned, smiling with ease. "Just some legal paperwork, nothing urgent." She walked toward him slowly, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You've been distant lately," she murmured, resting her head on his shoulder. "Is everything all right?" He kissed her forehead. "Of course. Just tired." She leaned back, watching him. "I hope you know how much I love you." It took everything in him not to flinch. That night, the mask cracked. Daniel had just finished dinner, most of it discreetly pushed into a napkin in his lap, when Sarah stepped into the kitchen to collect the plates. Catherine followed her in. "Sarah," Catherine said calmly, "do you enjoy working here?" Sarah nodded, cautious. "Of course, Ma'am." "I've always appreciated your loyalty," Catherine continued, circling slowly. "But I have to ask, have you been going through my things?" Sarah froze. "No," she said. Catherine leaned closer. "Are you sure?" Sarah met her eyes. "I know where the line is." Catherine smiled. "Well, let's hope you remember that." She left without another word, leaving Sarah alone, heart pounding in her chest. It started with a headline, "Whitmore Empire in Turmoil, Fraud Allegations Surface." Within hours, Daniel's name was splashed across every major outlet, TV, news sites, finance blogs. The story painted a damning picture: cooked books, insider trading, embezzlement. Worse, there were medical records, leaked documents claiming he was suffering from a degenerative neurological illness, early-onset dementia, unfit to lead, a danger to himself and others. And then came the photos. Doctored images of Daniel arguing with staff, shaky phone videos taken out of context, showing him stumbling, slurring, footage from his worst days under the effects of the poison, all twisted into a narrative that screamed unstable. Catherine appeared first in an emotional interview. "I love my husband," she said, voice cracking at all the right places. "But he's not the man he used to be. He's sick, he's paranoid, and he's lashing out at the people who care most." Then Brandon chimed in, flanked by legal counsel. "My brother's actions have put the company and thousands of jobs at risk. We're doing everything we can to protect what he built, while he self-destructs." They even dragged Sarah into it. Anonymous sources claimed she was more than just a maid, that she was Daniel's mistress, his enabler, the woman manipulating a sick man for his fortune. By the time Daniel saw the media storm from a cracked TV screen in a rundown motel, the damage had already been done. He collapsed later that night. It happened just after they checked into a remote cabin deep in the woods, owned by an old client who owed Daniel a favor and asked no questions. Daniel was barely through the door before his knees buckled. Sarah caught him just in time, easing him down onto the sofa. His skin was pale, lips dry. The poison, though no longer being consumed, still lingered in his system like rot in old wood. "I can't breathe," he gasped. Sarah knelt beside him, crushed charcoal tablets already in her hand. "You have to fight this. Just a little longer." She ground up the pills into water and held it to his lips. He drank it slowly, trembling. That night, she sat by the fireplace while he slept, wrapped in blankets and sweat. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, she searched his laptop for anything that could prove they were telling the truth. She didn't expect to find the hard drive. It was tucked into the lining of Daniel's briefcase, an encrypted folder labeled with Brandon's initials. Sarah wasn't a tech expert, but she knew enough to get into the metadata. File creation dates, video tags, hidden folders. One of them had a name, July 4 Conf. She tried opening it, encrypted. "Daniel," she whispered, shaking him gently. "Daniel, wake up." He opened his eyes slowly, groggy. "I found something. On your hard drive. It might be it, the proof." He sat up with difficulty. She showed him the screen. "That's from Brandon's laptop," Daniel said. "I copied it weeks ago. I thought it might be useful, but I didn't think." He reached for the keyboard, hands trembling. His password didn't work. Neither did his backup key. "It needs the original decryption key," he muttered, "which means it's still at the mansion, probably on Brandon's desktop. Without it, the file's useless." Sarah sat back. "Then we go back." He looked at her, stunned. "We can't. You saw what they did. If I show my face now—" "Then we don't show your face," she said. "We take theirs." The next morning, Catherine stood on a stage in front of flashing cameras, announcing the Whitmore Foundation Gala for Mental Health Awareness, a charity event hosted at the estate, public, televised, and flooded with press, a masterstroke. They would weaponize Daniel's supposed illness for sympathy. They'd parade donors and guests through the mansion, reinforcing their version of the truth. It was more than PR. It was a public burial. "They're locking the story in," Daniel said bitterly, watching the live stream. "They're rewriting who I am." Sarah watched silently. "Then that's where we bury them." That night in the cabin, Sarah planned. They only had a few days. Sarah used a burner phone to message a contact, a freelance hacker she'd met during a past job, who owed her more than a favor. She sent over the encrypted file. If they could get the unlock key from Brandon's computer, the hacker could break it wide open. Daniel watched her move, focused, fearless. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. She looked at him. "Yes, I do." Meanwhile, back at the estate, Brandon stared at his phone, his expression unreadable. "You think he'll show up?" Catherine asked, pouring herself wine. "No," Brandon said. "He's either dead in a ditch or too far gone to crawl out." Catherine sipped. "And if he's not?" Brandon's smile was ice cold. "Then we finish what we started." The night of the gala arrived under a sky heavy with storm clouds, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The Whitmore estate gleamed with artificial elegance. Floodlights bathed the grounds in gold, luxury cars lined the circular drive, and photographers swarmed the red carpet. Inside, the ballroom pulsed with soft jazz, clinking glasses and laughter that tried too hard. At the center of it all stood Catherine, radiant in a silver gown, welcoming guests with grace that bordered on rehearsed. Brandon worked the room with equal charm, shaking hands, posing for photos, making veiled references to Daniel's retirement. They were celebrating their victory, but the ghosts they buried weren't staying dead. In the servants' quarters, Sarah adjusted the sleek black blazer she'd stolen from the mansion's event staff wardrobe. A cap hid her face, and a staff ID, fake but flawless, hung from her collar. Her hair was tied back tight, her nerves tighter. She moved through the halls like she belonged, always one step ahead of the cameras. Her destination, Brandon's private study. The door was locked, of course, but Sarah had been picking locks since she was 16. With a subtle click, she slipped inside and closed the door behind her. Everything was exactly as she remembered. The room smelled faintly of old leather and ambition. She went straight to the desk, pulled out the second drawer on the left, and removed the false bottom. Beneath it was a hard drive, Small, black, marked only with tape and the initials BW. She smiled. Found you. She slid it into her pocket and exited just as quietly as she came, weaving through the mansion like a shadow. Meanwhile, hidden in a van parked 3 blocks away, Daniel sat in silence, a blanket draped over his shoulders. His body was still weak, his skin too pale, his breathing shallow, but his eyes burned with resolve. On a laptop screen, Sarah's hacker contact had finished decrypting the file from the earlier drive. The moment the second hard drive was connected, the 2 pieces merged. The final product, a clean, clear video file labeled Final Asset. Daniel clicked play. Brandon's voice came first. When he's gone, the board falls in line. Catherine gets the power, I get the equity. And Daniel? He dies with dignity. We'll even host a tribute, people eat that stuff up. Catherine laughed softly in the background. Just make sure Sarah stays out of the way. She's not as dumb as she looks. Daniel closed the laptop. Let's go. Inside the ballroom, the lights dimmed as the MC took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this beautiful evening of philanthropy and remembrance. Tonight we honor a great man, Daniel Whitmore, and support a cause close to his heart. The screen behind the stage lit up. Photos of Daniel flashed across it. Childhood images, business achievements, wedding photos with Catherine, all meant to paint a portrait of loss. But halfway through the slideshow, the feed glitched. Then it cut. Darkness. A pause. Then, the grainy but audible video of Brandon and Catherine played across every screen in the ballroom. Gasps exploded like gunfire. Brandon froze mid-conversation with a donor. Catherine stood paralyzed near the front row. Their voices echoed across the marble walls. The board falls in line. Just make sure Sarah stays out of the way. Daniel, he dies with dignity. Silence fell over the room. Then chaos erupted. Guests turned, cameras flashed, someone screamed. A woman fainted. And from the back of the ballroom, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. As Daniel Whitmore, pale and thin but very much alive, stepped into the light. He walked slowly, supported by Sarah at his side. Catherine's face drained of color. Daniel! Brandon bolted for the exit. He didn't make it far. Uniformed officers swarmed through the doors, weapons raised. Brandon Whitmore, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, corporate fraud, and obstruction of justice. Brandon didn't struggle. He just stood there, stunned, as they cuffed him and read his rights. Catherine, ever the performer, fell to her knees. I didn't know. I was manipulated. I loved him. But Sarah stepped forward and pulled a second flash drive from her pocket. This contains financial transfers, voice memos, and messages tying Catherine Whitmore to everything. She was never a bystander. She was the architect. One of the detectives took it without a word. Another set of cuffs came out. Catherine screamed as they dragged her out of the ballroom. From the stage, Daniel watched it all unfold, his hands shaking at his sides. He could barely stand. A ripple of applause began, not from the guests, but from the estate staff. People who had seen the lies up close, people who had feared the power behind the name Whitmore. The applause grew, then spread, until even the guests, unsure and stunned, joined in. Justice didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered. Outside, the rain finally began to fall. Daniel stepped onto the front steps of the estate, the cold air biting through his thin suit. His legs gave way, finally utterly exhausted. Sarah caught him before he hit the ground. Hey, she whispered, lowering him gently to the steps. Stay with me. Blue and red lights flashed across their faces. Sirens echoed in the distance. I didn't think I'd make it, he said weakly. You did, she replied. You made it. They sat in silence for a moment, the storm around them washing away the lies. Daniel looked up at her, eyes full of something deeper than gratitude. What do I do now? Sarah gave a faint smile. Live.